Virabhadra, a Hindu mythological warrior, is who it's named after. We find that all three poses are meant to symbolize our internal ability to overcome ego and ignorance. All three versions of warrior create a lot of flexibility, strength, and help you learn what it is to concentrate. If ever you've attempted these, you'll find that the whole body is working, twisting, turning, pressing. It's a lot to focus on. And sometimes when we're moving through a yoga flow in a sequence during class, there isn't time to pause and think, where are my hips? Where are my heels? And so it's really important to come back to videos like this, where you can see the breakdown and practice it. Because muscle has memory, and the more we practice it on its own, separate from a flow, the faster you're going to be able to nail it during the flow in class. Warrior 2 is, as they all are, a very long warrior. We're going to start on our mats with our feet wide. The success of this pose is really dependent on the distance your feet are apart, and that's going to vary from person to person. And so when we first step into it, it's a general idea of how far the feet are going to be apart. Neutral hips are really important the whole way through, and it's something people struggle with a lot. Neutral hips is squared. It means one hip is not raised higher than the other. It means that one hip is not further behind than the other. Neutral, squared, on all planes. In our wide stance, pivoting, right toes open, 90. Allowing back heel to drop externally, or you can think about bringing the toes internally towards the body's midline. Rolling the weight to the outside of the foot, very similar to Warrior 1. From here, you may already be struggling to keep the hips squared to the front. You may feel a lot of turbulence in the knees. Lining up the heels is the full expression of this pose. However, you can bring the front foot in line with the instep, center of the foot, if this feels better on your knees. Personally, for me, it does. Rolling into the outsides of both feet on this one, front foot as well, our right. Hands on your hips just to keep them settled and squared. We're allowing tailbone to press towards the floor, which will elongate the spine. Nice long spine. Taking the knee out and over the ankle, being careful not to allow it to internally rotate or externally rotate to the point where the inside of this foot lifts up off of your mat. Ground down through the whole foot. When this knee bends, typically, this hip bone wants to drop down in. This feels easy. This is really easy to do. However, where are my hip bones? To raise this one up, I need to drop this one down, and it brings me out of the depth of it. Remembering that the distance from the floor doesn't matter. It's our form that matters, not the depth. Dropping left hip bone down into the outer hip and thigh. Keep rising right hip bone up to keep us squared. The tailbone continues to press down towards the floor. If you've done Tantra Yoga with me, Mula Bandha. The ribs press in towards the spine and we float the weight up. Continue to squeeze with the outer hip. Continue squeezing here in order to pull the knee back. This is a glute and hip exercise. You also use the strength of the inner thigh and the hip flexors to help press the thigh backwards. Squaring out those hips, taking the depth that you can for the day and directing that knee between big toe and second toe, trying to avoid the frequent fall in. This does not protect the knee, and the knee is the most important part of this pose. Second most important part is keeping the hips squared. So if you lose that, you need to back up out of it a little more. Another tough part is keeping the spine neutral and long with the arms. When we lean into a leg, for example, here we're going right, the body naturally tends and unconsciously leans to the right. However, this brings me out of line. Trying to draw a straight line from tailbone to navel to sternum. And avoid the lean or any backwards lean. If you're with me, bring those feet in, roll out the ankles, other direction. Let's go to the other side and look at the arms a little more closely. Stepping it wide, keeping in mind what it felt like on the other side. It's going to help you decide if you want to step the same distance or not. Taking left, pivot, open. You're either lining up your heels or you're lining up front heel with the arch of the back foot. Back foot rotates, 45. Quad keeps the knee straight and strong and keeps it from hyperextending. I used to hyperextend a lot in all of my poses. To quit doing that, I started to think about the quad lifting up into the hip instead of pressing the knee backwards. Hopefully that helps some of you. Rolling the weight to the outsides of the feet. Hands on your hips, square. Allow the knee to come out. If you need to, touch it, push it behind you. Keep rolling to the outsides of the feet, checking on those hips. They should be squared front and at the same level with one another. That knee can be over the ankle, but it should not pass over the toes. It doesn't direct forward, it doesn't direct backwards. Think of being a straight line from tailbone to navel to sternum. The arms are up, but they're reaching actively, vigorously away from one another. This isn't a loosey-goosey kind of move where you're just kind of here. Actively reaching away from one another. Careful not to bring them forward and engage that chest. Keep it open. The shoulder blades are pressing firm into your back and down the back. Straight line. And then we engage the neck, looking left, and ensues the concentration to maintain this form. Straighten out left knee, drop the arms, pivot toes forward, bring it in, and shake it out.